large.
Good morning, everyone. The meeting will begin in 3, 2, 1.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome you to the March 10th, 2022 meeting of the Hillsborough County Building Board of Adjustment Appeals and Examiners. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the oath if you're going to give any testimony. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America, to the republic,
which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Again, if you're going to give testimony, raise your right hand. Answer the following question. Do you promise or affirm that any testimony you'll give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Please be seated. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Sam Greenberg,
Here.
Mike McEnany,
Here.
Charles Foster, Daniel Greenberg,
Here.
Henry Mosley,
Here.
James Palavita,
Here.
Kathy Pratt,
Here.
Doug Shields.
here,
Thank you.
So all 8 are present and accounted for? Thank
Yes.
you. Everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Looking for a motion for approval?
Make a motion to approve.
Have a second? Wait, I need a second first. Second. Okay, Foster and then Henry? Mosley. Go ahead, comment.
Yeah, I'd like to get my last name correct. So just spell it.
I apologize, I will.
Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
It's just echoing.
Yeah, so moved. Any unfinished business? Okay, hearing none. Introduce the building official for the city of Tampa, Mr. Hudgison. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is J.C. Hudgison, Construction Service Center Manager and Chief Building Official for the City of Tampa. Just here this morning to speak on the implementation of our construction activity compliance team. With the growth in the City of Tampa, there's also been an increase of illegal construction activity. Since 2019, there's been at least 2,000 work without permit complaints filed within the city. Those responsibilities were spread across my division, Construction Services, as well as the Tampa Police Department and Neighborhood Enhancement Code Enforcement Division. Through coordination and collaboration with the departments, along with our city attorney's office these last few months, we're creating a condensed team, a dedicated team whose sole responsibility will be to monitor that illegal construction activity and enforce proper permitting within the city of Tampa. So initially, the intent of the construction activity team will have 4 city employees, 1 construction investigator, 2 code enforcement officers, and an office support specialist. Our 2 main items will be to enforce, obviously, work without permits. Inspection staff will continue to work with our stop work orders, and our notice of violations would actually go through our local magistrate. What we really need help with you all is through the current interlocal agreement to present for the board hearings for enforcement on contractors. So, normally our process, we can send that through magistrate with illegal work, but for the contractor side, we definitely would like to use the board to help enforce illegal activity. And then the other part is just for us performing construction investigations. It usually would bounce between me, I have my chief inspector here, Troy, just different ways it would come in and we kind of handle it differently. So it's just good to have a dedicated team to help do that. So our intent is just to ensure a comprehensive approach for illegal construction. And we'll have our initial stop work order, notice of violation. There's not a one size fits all for these things. So just being able to have another tool to potentially help with enforcement and better compliance for a better, safer built environment. So I'm here for any questions, but I just wanted to be here to be a part of the process to kind of hear how it goes so we can kind of know how we need to prepare our cases and be ready if we do need to bring something to the board.
We got copies this week. Has the new interlocal agreement been completed yet? Is it in process? Because it's hard to tell. They sent me like 8 documents.
I always like to say in process because I don't have the city. I don't have it for sure, but like I said, our intent was basing it off of the previous one, which would allow us to come here for illegal activity and legal construction. So I know our city attorney's office is looking over it.
Super. I'd like to give your department thumbs up. Yesterday, there was a webinar on Acela for private providers. Great job. I don't remember any of the names. It was a blur because I was multitasking, but it was very well presented. Likewise, the county did an Acela presentation yesterday about certificate of occupancy, and which we'll share the email link. It was recorded. I don't know if your staff records those, but it'd be great to share with some of the people make it available.
Yeah, we're learning of the technology and finding people where they are. If they can't make it, we have a way to record those and provide videos and upload them to our website so people can just constantly refresh them and have a way to get access to that information.
And the staff has been very helpful. Claudia Ewing.
Claudia.
Anytime you have a question, within an hour, you've got an answer back. So again, thumbs up, at least from our office to yours.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Daniel, this is Doug Shields. If we run into some unlicensed activity, should we go to that link or should we call you direct?
Right now, call me direct right now. We're trying to set up our AnswerNet system and get up our call center to be able to handle those specific calls. But we can route them and I can provide you additional information for our full compliance staff. So any of them, if you want to call them directly as well, we can get that information to you.
What number should we call?
You can use our direct number right now, the 3100. And then we'll get it directed. Like I said, we're trying to set up a direct hotline. I didn't want to give the hotline and the number not be up yet, but we just got approved from council for the second reading March 3rd to actually start to do this. So that's why I just asked Kimber to come forward to talk to you guys about, it's coming. So we're just, before we do our full press release, we'll have the number and the hotline and everything will be on there.
Okay, I can go through Kimber to get it or?
Once it's up, Doug, I think he's going to share it with Kimber and then she'll share it with all the boards.
That'd be great. I appreciate your time.
What was that number? The number?
The main number is.
Well, our main number right now is the 274-3100.
274-3100?
Yes, sir. That's just our direct number, and you can use that number right now. Like I said, we'll be getting an actual section for option 4 construction compliance. But right now, you can just call our normal number, and we can get that to you.
Thank you.
Make sure you dial 813 with the new changes in the phone.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, you do.
Yeah, 21 area codes or something in Florida. It's crazy. Anybody else, any questions for the building official? Good, bad, or indifferent? Thank you, sir, for your time. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Who's up for the first case? Presenting. Ends in 537.
Morning, board members. Matthew Kent, Hillsborough County Code Compliance Inspector. I have 7 cases for you this morning, starting with case number HC-CMP-21-0000-537. The violator is Jose Eizmendiz and Rosalia Eizmendiz. Address is 3910 West Flora Street, Tampa, Florida 33614. Allegations are that Jose Eizmendiz and Rosalia Eizmendiz have failed to provide residential new construction additions permits for a 12 by 24 accessory unit and is in willful and deliberate violation of section 8-1 Hillsborough County Code of Ordinances, Part A HCCCO as follows. 105.1, permit required. Recommendations are that citation be affirmed as written and a fine of $500 and a recording fee be assessed and shall constitute a lien against any real or personal property owned by the violator until the fines have been paid and the property is brought into compliance.
Motion to affirm. Second. McEnany, Foster. Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. Next case, 23239.
Sir, case number HC-CMP-21-000239. The violator is Frank Garcia Careaga. Address 16009 Ballica Drive, Tampa, Florida 33618. Allegations are that Frank Garcia Careaga has failed to obtain a permit for the construction of a 14 by 30 shed structure and is in willful and deliberate violation of Section 8-1 Hillsborough County Code of Ordinances, Part A, HCCCO, as follows: 105.1 permit required. Recommendations that a citation be affirmed as written, a fine of $500 and a recording fee be assessed and shall constitute a lien against any real or personal property owned by the violator until the fines have been paid and the property is brought into compliance.
Motion to affirm. Second. Mosley Foster. Discussion.
Please turn your mic on.
Sorry, is it the in-ground pool that's shown on some of the photos, is that an issue,
The above ground pool?
the above-ground pool? Do those have to be permitted? I thought there was
They
a
do.
comment that was part of it.
They do, however, the pool's not filled with water.
Okay,
Um,
all right. Is that part of the case?
No.
No, okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Next case.
This case is case HC-CMP-21-00000386. Violator is Lake Magdalene Real Estate LLC. Address is 14748 Lake Magdalene Circle, Tampa, Florida 33613. Allegations are Lake Magdalene Real Estate LLC has failed to obtain a permit for renovations to a home, including electrical, mechanical, plumbing, framing, and installing a new staircase, and is in willful and deliberate violation of Section 8-1 Hillsborough County Code of Ordinances, Part A, HCCCO, as follows: 105.1 permit required. Recommendations are that citation be affirmed as written and a fine of $500 and a recording fee be assessed and shall constitute a lien against any real or personal property owned by the violator until the fines have been paid and the property is brought into compliance.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, Foster and Dan, in that order. Discussion. Do we know any idea about how much electrical work was done from the photos? It looks like possibly in addition to the service or, something extensive was done.
It was essentially a full gut and remodel.
Okay.
I
Okay, but I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but no permit, no inspections.
No permit, no inspection.
Okay.
They did get a plumbing permit at one point, and had a consult inspection, and that's what brought it to our attention that they were doing a full remodel.
Got it.
And that permit has since expired and been canceled.
Okay. Have a motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved. Thank you.
Okay. Case number HC-CMP-21-00000254. Violator is Ralph Smith and Alexis Smith. Address is 4017 Robinson Road, Valrico, Florida 33594. Allegations are that Ralph Smith and Alexis Smith have failed to obtain permits for a screen enclosure addition to rear mobile home, accessory building, garage, and shed installed on property and are in willful and deliberate violation of Section 8-1 Hillsborough County Code of Ordinances, Part A, HCCCO, as follows: 105.1 permit required. Recommendations of the citation be affirmed as written, and a fine of $500 and a recording fee be assessed and shall constitute a lien against any real or personal property owned by the violator until the fines have been paid and the property is brought into compliance.
Motion.
Motion affirm.
Second. McEnany, Foster. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Okay, case number HC-CMP-21-00000108. Violator is Antonio Gutierrez and Dora Trevino. Address is 4010 Gallagher Road, Dover, Florida 33527. Allegations are Antonio Gutierrez and Dora Trevino have failed to obtain permits for home renovations and living space additions to the property and is in willful and deliberate violation of Section 8-1 Hillsborough County Code of Ordinances, Part A, HCCCO as follows. 105.1, permit required. Recommendations are citation be affirmed as written and a fine of $500 and recording fee be assessed and shall constitute a lien against any real or personal property owned by the violator until the fines have been paid and the property is brought into compliance.
Motion?
Motion to affirm. Mosley.
Second. Mosley Foster. Discussion?
Question, it says here is a compliance reinspection conducted. Any of this stuff been updated?
What's that?
Was any of the work updated in that reinspection that you guys have noted here on the 28th?
No, there wasn't. It remained the same.
Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Next case?
Okay, we have an affirmation of citation, case number 2020-0663. Violators Maria, Marlene, Sibrian, Alfaro, et al. Address 2424 Crestview Road, Wimauma, Florida 33598. The allegation is Maria, Marlene, Sibrian, Alfaro, et al. Have failed to obtain a permit for construction of a pergola structure over 150 square feet and is willful and deliberate violation of Section 8-1 Hillsborough County Code of Ordinances, Part A, HCCCO as follows. 105.1, permit required. Recommendations are the citation be affirmed as written and a fine of $500 and recording fee be assessed and shall constitute a lien against any real or personal property owned by the violator until the fines have been paid and the property is brought into compliance.
Motion? Second?
Mosley, second.
Foster Mosley. Discussion?
I don't see a picture of the offending structure in this. It's just a backyard.
It's a pergola, so it's quite open. It's kind of difficult to see in the photo. I wasn't able to really go on the property to get a clear photo of it.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
Way in the back,
Way
near the
back
lake,
there.
it looks like, or some
Okay.
kind of fence.
Gotcha.
Any other questions?
Yeah, quick question. How do you know the size of it then, if you weren't able to measure it? Are you just speculating?
Sure. I mean, it's clearly over 10 by 15
Okay.
in my mind.
That's all I need to know. Thank
Okay.
you.
Anybody else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you. One more?
Sorry. Last case, HC-CMP-21-00000068. Violators Donald S. Hugh and Sonia Denise Simmons. Allegations are Donald S. Hugh and Sonia Denise Simmons have failed to obtain permits for a front porch addition to home and accessory pole barn structure with electrical and are in willful and deliberate violation of Section 8-1 Hillsborough County Code of Ordinances, Part A, HCCCO as follows. 105.1, permit required. The recommendations are citation be affirmed as written and a fine of $500 and a recording fee be assessed and shall constitute a lien against any real or personal property owned by the violator until the fines have been paid and the property is brought into compliance.
Motion? So McEnany and Foster. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Thank you, board members.
Good morning, board members. My name is Ricky Finley. I'm a code compliance inspector with Hillsborough County Building Department. I have, I believe, 6 cases to present today. My first case is case number HC-CMP-21 -000052. Violator is Joseph W. Blitch. Address of violation is 6920 Valerie Lane, Riverview, Florida, 33569. Allegations: Joseph W. Blitch has failed to obtain permits for converting the bottom floor of his home into a living space and is in willful and deliberate violation of Section 8-1 Hillsborough County Code of Ordinances, Part A, HCCCO as follows. 105.1, permit required. Recommendations: citation be affirmed as written. A fine of $500 and recording fee be assessed and shall constitute a lien against any real or personal property owned by the violator until the fines have been paid and the property is brought into compliance.
Motion?
Second.
McEnany and Foster, discussion?
Mosley has a question.
Me too. Go ahead.
The question is the structure, the location in a flood zone?
No.
No.
It was brought up that it was, but he had obtained a new certificate of elevation that he has turned in. He's working on permits now,
Okay.
but it shows that it is well above the BFE.
Based on the new maps?
Correct.
Anybody else? Questions? All those in favor? Opposed? So moved. Thank you.
Excuse me.
Case.
My next case is HC-CMP-21-00000510. Violator is Osvaldo Morales. Address of violation is 522 Old Plantation Drive, Brandon, Florida, 33511. Allegations: Osvaldo Morales has failed to obtain permits for enclosure of screen room and is in willful and deliberate violation of Section 8-1 Hillsborough County Code of Ordinances, Part A, HCCCO as follows. 105.1, permit required. Recommendations: citation be affirmed as written. A fine of $500 and recording fee be assessed and shall constitute a lien against any real or personal property owned by the violator until the fines have been paid and the property is brought into compliance.
Motion?
Motion to affirm.
Second?
Second.
So Mosley and Foster, any discussion?
Yeah, I have a question.
Question?
So these pictures look like it's fairly old. Any idea how long this has been in sight? I mean, it looks like the electrical service is tied into this enclosure here. Just curious, how far do we go back on this stuff?
I don't know exactly the time frame of it. It seemed to be new enough for us to require a permit. It came from the property management of the townhome community. And I don't know if the pictures show it, but looking at it, the work wasn't done very well. So it just looks like he kind of covered up the screen porch and so we moved forward with the case.
If you look at picture number, the PDF number 7, they show where the slab was overlaid on top of the existing lanai slab. We don't know how it's anchored. I mean, there's more unknowns than known, so.
And I didn't have access inside the residence to see what was done on the inside. It's just from the outside.
Yeah, I mean, it's already separating the slab from the older slab. Well, you know, I don't think they did a very good job.
No.
Based on what you presented.
Is there a cutoff that is there a cutoff that the city or county would be looking at in cases where it's, 20 years old, 15 years old?
Yeah, this is Travis Minnis, Executive Manager of Building Inspections and Code Compliance. Basically, we go out there and we go out upon complaint. So when we go out, we look at it. If there's evidence of new construction, if it's found on the tax appraisers to have been added in a recent time frame, if it looks like it's been existing for 10 years or more, we pretty much say there's no sign and no evidence of new construction and just move on. And then obviously internal stuff is a little bit different. if they give us access to the home and then talking with them, if we can prove that it was any time in the recent future, and of course, they can always lie to us, but hopefully we can see some kind of evidence that it was newly done. But that's pretty much how it works. There's no given cutoff. And it would also depend on what we see when we go out there. If it's 20 years old and it's a life safety issue, I may not go in as far as a code compliance case, but I'll get hold of Joe Gross and the code enforcement and then have them go out there and do basically a life safety check. Okay.
All right, cool. Yeah, thanks for the explanation. Appreciate it.
Anybody else? All's in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved. Not to interrupt you, it keeps coming up, so I want to interject something at this point, if that's okay with you.
Of course.
The city was saying, and Travis just mentioned about upon complaints. 3 or 4 years ago, there was a House Bill 60. I think that's what and I'm looking at Keith because I know we've worked on this together. They no longer accept anonymous complaints, and that's state law statute. So if it's your neighbor across the street and you say, hey, somebody's building a blah, 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 you got to give your name. Unless they or your inspectors, other people in the city or the county have driven by and go, yeah, they're going to refer it. And then it's just a department complaint.
Correct.
But, so when you're saying about unlicensed, I know Doug was asking, you've got to give your name. Otherwise, it makes it hard because of state law for the city or the county to investigate it and actually enforce the rules of the land. So just an FYI. Thank you. Yeah.
Of course. My next case is case number 20210034. Violator is John Mary Enterprises LTD. The tenant is Louis Castellanos. Address of violation is 7415 South US Highway 301, units number 102 and 103, Riverview, Florida 33578. Allegations: John Mary Enterprises LTD has failed to obtain permits for renovations to business and is in willful and deliberate violation of Section 8-1 Hillsborough County Code of Ordinances, Part A, HCCCO as follows. 105.1, permit required. Recommendations: citation be affirmed as written, a fine of $500 and a recording fee be assessed and shall constitute a lien against any real or personal property owned by the violator until the fines have been paid and the property is brought into compliance.
Motion? McEnany and Foster. Any questions? I have a question. Sorry.
That's all right.
This is a leased property, so ultimately the property owner is responsible for the non-permit, right?
Correct.
So the landlord, I know in our property, we say improvements must be, performed by licensed contractors and permits obtained from the appropriate agencies.
Correct.
That's the statute and the construction ordinance, right?
Correct. And the lien's going against the entire complex. It's like a strip mall.
Yes.
And the tenant did the work, but it goes against the property owner.
Just want to confirm.
Correct.
Because other people own property and they need to be aware of that. They, oh, I didn't do it. The tenant, no, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Anybody else? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. Thank you.
My next case is case number HC-CMP-21-00000241. Violator is Rod Kilty. Address of violation is 609 11th Street Southwest, Ruskin, Florida 33570. Allegations: Rod Kilty has failed to obtain permits for an accessory structure attached to home and over 150 square foot and is in willful and deliberate violation of Section 8-1 Hillsborough County Code of Ordinances, Part A, HCCCO as follows. 105.1, permit required. Recommendations: citation be affirmed as written, a fine of $500 and a recording fee be assessed and shall constitute a lien against any real or personal property owned by the violator until the fines have been paid and the property is brought into compliance.
Motion?
Motion to affirm.
Second?
Mosley, second.
Foster Mosley. Discussion? Is this in a flood zone?
I'm not sure about that.
Because, you know, living in South County, it seems like anything that's southwest lately has been in a flood zone. So I'm just curious. If it doesn't-
Normally, I put it in the case if it comes up on property appraisers in flood zone, I put it in the case, but
I'm not being critical. I'm just,
No.
just out of curiosity.
of course.
We get these all the time. So. Okay, motion is second. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
My next case is case number HC-CMP-21-00000141. Violator is Goli Shazardi and Soraya Borati. Address of violation is 2124 South 78th Street, Tampa, Florida, 33619. Allegations, Goli Shazardi and Soraya Borati have failed to obtain permits for accessory structure over 150 square foot and is in willful and deliberate violation of Section 8-1 Hillsborough County Code of Ordinances, Part A, HCCCO as follows. 105.1, permit required. Recommendations, citation be affirmed as written, a fine of $500 and a recording fee be assessed and shall constitute a lien against any real or personal property owned by the violator until the fines have been paid and the property is brought into compliance.
Motion?
Second.
McEnany Foster, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
My final case is case number HC-CMP-21-00000292. Violator is Gloria Esperanza Torres. Address of violation is 7713 Coral Vine Lane, Tampa, Florida, 33619. Allegations, Gloria Esperanza Torres has failed to obtain permits for new entry door, new siding on home, enclosing carport into living space, and re-roof of home, and is in willful and deliberate violation of Section 8-1 Hillsborough County Code of Ordinances, Part A, HCCCO as follows. 105.1, permit required. Recommendations, citation be affirmed as written, a fine of $500 and recording fee be assessed and shall constitute a lien against any real or personal property owned by the violator until the fines have been paid and the property is brought into compliance.
Motion? Second?
Mosley, second.
Foster Mosley. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you.
Thank you, board members.
Couple questions.
Put on your mic.
I don't know who can answer this, but just so I'm familiar. So how, we do 50 or 100 of these a year. How many of them pay? Do we know how quickly they resolve these issues? And what percentage, a rough guess? And then what's the process? So they answer the first question.
Okay. I can't give you an exact percentage. We can actually go back and look for that for the next board meeting. Basically, we get two kinds of violators. The ones that get caught and immediately get their permits and get it taken care of. That's probably, I would guess, around 35%. Then we get the ones that have no intentions of ever fixing anything and doing anything about it until they go to sell their property. And when they go to sell their property, it comes up on the lien search. And so then they call us and, they're expecting us to jump through hoops. We need to get this taken care of. We got a closing next Friday, and, they're trying to get the permit, trying to get their plans reviewed, and trying to get us to, dismiss the case. So those are basically the two kinds. And every once in a while, the smallest percentage would be the people who probably live out their lives on the property. And then when it gets transferred to their children, I'll get something that, the person this is against has passed away, well, the violation still stands on the property. You have to fix it. And then they get it taken care of. So a large percentage of these get fixed, but probably a small percentage in the first year to year and a half. And then probably the majority of them are between 3 and 8 years because people tend to sell their properties.
So the lien ensures that, to get the 500 back.
Yes, well, and we're not interested, and I don't want to say that nonchalantly. The $500 doesn't make a difference to us. The actual bleeding lien on their properties is what compels them to come into compliance. And that's our whole position, and our whole duty is to get it compliant, to make it safe for the next person who's going to live in it.
So perfect. So then they come in, they want you to, the case where the folks, are selling a house and want you to dismiss it.
No, we don't dismiss.
Yeah, great.
They have to come into
Right.
compliance, and we won't even, unless there's a mess up in the cashier process.
Right.
If it comes through the proper channels, we will not accept the $500 until the project is in compliance. And
Okay,
at that point, we'll
Define compliant.
if it's work without a permit, they have to get a permit, and they have to get an engineer's letter stating that it meets the building code.
Okay.
So they pay that engineer, our $500 is
Okay.
nothing. They pay
That's
a
what I
double
want-
permit fee. They pay that engineer to come out and do an inspection and basically sign and seal it stating that it meets the building code at the time of the violation.
So that's provided they get an engineer's,
Correct.
stamp of approval,
Correct.
then they're free to go.
Yes.
And then if they don't get one, then they got to fix whatever.
They got to fix it no matter what. And yes, then the engineer comes out, and does the inspection. So they'll have to pull the permit if it's a violation for non-permitted work. If it's a violation of not getting an inspection, they just didn't close out the permit properly. Florida statute allows us to close it due to age if it's 6 years or older. If it's not, then we require them to reissue the permit. So they have to pay for that, and then to get the inspections that were missed. If it's a roof final, I can send an inspector out there as long as it's not too old, and we can do the roof final inspection because nothing's covered up that we inspect at that point. We will go out and do the inspection. On the original permit, there was a fee assigned for us doing that final inspection. So we will go do the inspection. If it's something that's covered up, we'll require them to turn in an engineer's letter. We won't do any kind of destructive or go crawling through the attic because you didn't call the inspection in at the appropriate time.
Okay, thank you. And the one last question. Back, seemed like a couple of years ago, we would get these same, citations, but there would be ones piling up on top of others. It turned into from 500 to 1,000, 1,500, $2,000. What was the difference in those?
The difference was the process that we did. We've come to the realization that the fine isn't what gets them to come back in. It's the fact they can't sell their property that gets them to come back in. The fine is just basically, it's more of a hardship on them, and it doesn't create any more urgency.
So you're
to get
not
it
doing
taken
that
care of.
anymore?
No, we're doing a one-time citation.
Okay.
And it also, it prolonged the process because we'd send a fine, and then 30 days later, we send another $500, and then 30 days later, we send another $500. Right now, basically, if you're not showing that you're working towards compliance, then we bring it to the board and we get it affirmed, and we put the lien on all their property.
Okay, we weren't leaning them before?
You can't lien them until you get in front of the board.
Needs to be
So
board order.
it would take 90 days
See,
before
said
we
the
would
blind
even
man.
bring them in, and then they could sell the property with the violation being done. And if we have no lien on the property, nobody's going to know about it until
Okay,
after it's already sold.
gotcha.
So that allowed a lot of the house flippers to basically get their job done and get it sold before the violation ever got affirmed. So
Okay.
we kind of weighed and balanced it out and figured this was the best way to go. And you'll see we don't put the $500 fine on the contractors. We basically try to bring them in here as soon as we can if they're not working to compliance. Because as you know, $500 to a contractor, it's a business expense. I'll sign it and pay it and go on about my way. So we found it's more fortuitous to us to bring it in here and get you all to actually put something on the record, even if you know, don't do exactly what we recommend, it's still something on the record so that if we bring them in again, we can show a pattern and then we will get something more, effective against them. And then most of these people are state licensed, and in the future, they'll all be state licensed. So then we send our recommendations to the state of what we did and hopefully get them involved to look into their license and how they're doing things as well.
Good. Thank you, Travis.
Okay, you're welcome.
Wait, don't run off.
Sure.
You brought up an interesting point following up on Mike's question, if it's an older violation. Currently, I believe, Mr. Barrios, if you have an issue today, they will let you bring it up to code at the time of the original permit. If it's an expired permit, can you elaborate on some of that? I'm not sure what the city does because with the changes in building officials. Pasco doesn't give you that break, and neither does Manatee. They'll go, well, you messed up. We caught you today, so bring it up to today's code, which affects all of the trades. So. Sure.
What we do is, as long as it's not past 3 code cycles, we basically go by the date of the violation and or what when the permit was issued originally that's expired. And that's the building code cycle that we inspect to or require the engineer's letter to inspect to. If it gets older than that, then we depending on what the violation is and what the major code changes are, because most of the code changes aren't, until you get past that 3 cycles, aren't that drastic. So we feel that it's a safe, livable house if we do it to the code at that time. But if there's something real old that may be more drastic, then we would have to look at that.
I mean, just as an example is when the impact resistance lines and the wind speed lines changed, that would be something drastic that would have to be brought up to permit code, I believe.
As long as they meet the requirements over 25% of the exchange or whatever that is, yes.
Yeah, so it's a little more complicated than, and it varies by JC's agreeing.
Okay, good, but I like the strategy, just get their attention, and then the lien puts some weight to them.
Right.
I mean, the object is to provide, life safety protection for the public. That's the beginning of 471, 481, 468, 489, all those statute sections all say the same thing. So it's the building code.
The whole purpose of the building code is fire and life safety.
Exactly.
So that's basically our end goal, is to get compliance.
Anybody else? Thank you, Travis.
You're welcome.
Okay. Last case, affirmation or affidavit of violation.
Morning again, board members. I'm stepping in for Daniel Roman, who couldn't make it today. This is the continuance of case number HC-CMP-21-0000420. Violator is Lazaro Rolando Lantes. Address violation 8016 Bay Drive, Tampa, Florida 33635. Our apologies. There was a couple of documents that didn't get into your guys' board packets that I would like to present quickly before Mr. Lantes comes up. Previously, on our last board meeting, he had stated that the only trouble that he had been in the past was his license being suspended for some continuing education credits. And we found a final order from DBPR, the state licensing agency, that actually shows that that trouble that he got in was for not paying a subcontractor or a supplier. And part of the rectifying that was to do an extra 7 hours of continuing education credits. If you want me to present this on the screen, I could show that, but we just wanted to bring that into the board hearing here to let you know that he had an order filed against him for, I believe, 5,000 and some odd dollars. And then part of their stipulation was he had to pay some fines and fees and do extra continuing education credits for his license.
What year was that?
This was in 2011 is the date on it.
All right, thank you.
Also, in our files, we found 2 cases in Permits Plus. They never went to a board hearing, but the violator in those 2 cases were through Hillsborough County code compliance cases and Mr. Lantes. And both of those, one was in 2012 and one was in 2006, and they were for not falsifying a certificate of occupancy, but allowing occupancy before the certificate of occupancy was given. Both those cases ended up being closed out. One of the inspectors said that the people had moved out, so they closed the case, and the other one received a CO, so they closed the case. Just wanted to bring that to you guys' attention that it's not the first time. And then the last thing that I wanted to show is when he was here, he had showed on the screen that there was a document, an elevation certificate that was submitted in 2020, I believe, or let me see here, make sure that I have the right one. Yes, it was submitted in 2020, and he said that that certificate took 1.5 years to get uploaded into optics. Well, we've printed all those documents out, and the first document that was uploaded by him, it was in optics, and it was an elevation certificate that was denied. 1.5 years later, the homeowner, with help from the county, submitted a new elevation certificate that was approved. So those were 2 different documents that he was showing. It took 1.5 years to get into optics. We spoke with all of our county employees, and usually when something gets submitted, it's 24 to 48 hours and it gets uploaded into optics. So that document that he was showing took 1.5 years were 2 different documents. The first document that he showed was a denied elevation certificate of 2/19 of 2020. And then within a few months, he stated that he printed the elevation, the certificate of elevation. Well, this was never in optics and couldn't have been because the elevation certificate was in denied status. So 1.5 years later, when the homeowner submitted the approved elevation certificate, 2 days later, she was able to print out the real certificate of occupancy because the elevation certificate was approved. So those were just a couple of things that we wanted to touch on from what he had presented last time in his presentation.
So you're saying the certificate of occupancy was valid?
Not valid. The one that's in question, that he said he was printed out on the day of 2/17/21, has never been and is not to this day has ever been in optics. And it couldn't have been there because the elevation certificate was in denied status. So until all those things are approved, they don't generate a certificate of occupancy.
Okay, but then you said they did finally get a certificate of elevation, and then 2 days later, they got a certificate of occupancy?
Yeah, the owner did, not Mr. Lantes. 1.5 years later, the owner submitted an elevation certificate that was a different one that was approved, and then she got a certificate of occupancy that she printed out. So they do have a certificate of occupancy now that the owner got. She came down to the county, and with the county's help, she's the one that got the certificate of occupancy issued, and it had nothing to do with Mr. Lantes.
Do you have the new date on that new occupancy CO?
The date on the new certificate of occupancy is 8/20/2021. That was 2 days after she uploaded. She submitted it and it got uploaded into the optics 8/19 of 2021, the approved certificate of elevation. And then 2 days later, she had printed out the correct and certified certificate of occupancy.
What happened? How does 1 year go by when you don't get approved certificate of elevation, and then all of a sudden you can get a certificate of elevation? How did that happen?
Well, I think when this code case came up, when Daniel started the code case and found all this out, then the homeowners themselves started working with the county to see what things needed to be approved and what documents needed to be put into optics in order to receive the certificate of occupancy. So the homeowners got a new elevation certificate that they presented to the county that was approved, which then allowed her to get the certificate of occupancy.
This is Kathy Pratt. So the one in question dated February 17th of 21, where did that come from?
We still have no idea where this came from. That's why we're considering it to be fraudulent, because it's not in optics and has not been in optics, and we can't find anywhere. So whether he made this up or where he got it from, he's saying he printed it out of optics, but it was never in there.
Okay, is that the actual certificate that he says he received?
I believe so, yes. Yes.
How did you get
Daniel got
possession of that?
Daniel got a copy of this from the homeowners.
Okay,
This is the one that he had presented to the homeowners, and Daniel got it and couldn't find this anywhere in our system. So then brought up the case that he had no idea where this came from because it was never in optics.
so the one that the homeowner, the fraudulent certificate, was it on that same paper? And is that a special kind of paper?
Yeah, I believe it's just the paper. The layout is the same, but it's just, you could put in a different kind of paper to print it out onto. But this is not, you can't find that anywhere in optics or anywhere in our records that it was ever in optics.
Okay, so you're saying, in essence, that he got that paper and then he can get his hands on that same,
Not
or
the
he could
same-
take it.
He could get his hands on another one of an address next door, say.
You can Photoshop it.
And you could, change some things on it in Photoshop. But we can't be sure or certain how he got it, but it wasn't from optics.
So then you're saying that he either whited out what was on there?
Or changed an address from one number or a permit number from one number. Something that he did to falsify it because it was never in optics.
Does it look at all different than a valid certificate? Can you see something on there that makes you think that he forged it?
If you look closely how this one was printed out, that's the original one. And you look at this
Put it
one.
under the projector, please.
It's still hard to see, but if you look here, the permit number 83, this 6 or G looks like it was, had been messed with possibly, or, it's not as clear as this one. And I could pass this around to you guys to look at because it's very hard to see through this screen.
And one that's in our package ends in 36, not 37.
I think the one that was in the packet that ends in 36 was just an example. We had printed out some examples of what they should look
Okay.
like or what they do look like.
What would be changed on it? What would this be changed?
You'd have to make it match the property and the permit number.
Right, so do these look unusual? I mean, do these look unusual to a normal certificate of occupancy?
If you come over here and look from where I'm looking, it kind of does look different. I can't state that, I have no proof that 100% he did this, but if you look at like some of those letters comparative to how this one printed out, whether that's on the page or, some of these just don't look 100% clear as the example of the real certificate of occupancy. That to me it's just odd. And regardless of how, it was never in optics, so we can't find it and have never been able to find this in optics.
Has this ever happened before?
Not to my knowledge. I have to ask the guys that are here longer than myself, but not to my knowledge has this happened before. with a denied elevation certificate, that system wouldn't generate a certificate of occupancy.
Yep.
Is that right, Hank? Eric, Hank?
It's just, that's a lock. You can't print a CO unless you've got a flood certificate. It's been approved. Until one of the technicians checks it.
And here's the one that Mr. Lantes, Mr. Lantes presented this one stating that in 2/19/2020 was submitted and it took a year and a half to get into the system. And you can see in the highlighted area, it says denied. It was in the system. It didn't take a year and a half. It took a year and a half to get the original one put in the system from the homeowners. You know, I'm sure they just assumed they were good to go until we got the case started, and then they realized that they needed a new certificate of elevation. So then the homeowners, so this one is in denied status. So in denied status, this was of 2021. He states that he printed this one out on 2/17/21, but this one could not have been printed out with a denied elevation certificate.
It's built into the software. It locks it out.
Yeah, wow.
And here's the new one that a year and a half later that he was claiming it took a year and a half to get into optics. This one was put in by the homeowners and it is approved. And then 2 days later, on 8/20/21, this was generated in optics because of the approved elevation certificate.
The question, please. What was the issue with the first flood certificate that was submitted? Do you know?
I do not know. I didn't look through it. I just know that it was in denied status.
Well, I'm going to propose if we can hear from Mr. Lantis, if there's any additional information that he has.
Well, let's finish with staff, and if they have, nobody else has any questions, then we'll let.
So this is,
contractor-
where's a copy of the valid certificate of occupancy? This is a copy that the homeowner gave you.
Yeah, that's how Daniel received it, was from the homeowner.
And then Henry says you can't even, they couldn't make a mistake, right?
Not that anybody that we know of is aware of, and we got with IIO, and they didn't think that it's never happened before, and I don't believe that it could have happened. Travis is going to touch on that.
Yeah, the county isn't making any statements as to the falsified document. The county's statement is, we did not issue that CO at the time he says he had the CO printed out. He gave that CO to the homeowner in order to get his final payment and for them to move in. Where he got it, we have no idea. There is no CO dated 2/17, which would have been prior to even the flood elevation certificate being approved in optics. In your documents, you have a log from optics that shows everything since it was created, since that permit was created, the permit record was created in optics. And it shows dates of when things were done and when they weren't, or when they were accessed from inside and outside, and every access into that account. He also said that he downloaded it on a certain date and a certain time. That area is highlighted in yellow. There was no access into the optics record at that date and time where he says he downloaded that document. So the county's position is we did not issue that CO that he gave to the homeowner. The CO that we issued was the latter one when we had the corrected elevation certificate and it was approved.
Okay, let me understand it. So you said that if he could have only gotten the CO through optics.
Yes, that's when.
And you show no record of him
No.
going into optics to get the CO dated 2/17/21.
No, and he highlighted when he had his computer stuff up here, the date and the time when he said he downloaded it, that his computer guy, went through his system and found that this is when he did it. Well, there is no access into optics at that date and time.
From him.
From anybody at that date and time. So
So that's a
You know.
double confirmation.
Well, and like I said, our issue is we did not issue that CO. And until the homeowner started asking questions, and they called the county, that was when it was found out that they were living in the house without a CO. And the homeowner is the one who initiated the case against Mr. Lantes. And the homeowner is the one that got the final elevation certificate that was approved. Those are the facts as we have them in our system.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for staff? Anything else? Ricky?
Nope.
Okay,
Thank you, board members.
thank you. Mr. Landis?
Good morning. Just to clarify a couple of the terms that were mentioned here by the code officer. One, there was no motivation for me to go ahead and create this false certificate to get paid because I was already paid by Mr. and Mr. Kashkud when the drywall stage was done on the project. I have a copy of the contract that I have with Mr. Kashkud. And it shows the payment that was done at the drywall stage. I didn't need it to have a CO in order to get paid. I always schedule my draws in that manner. The other point that they mentioned was that Miss Rosalia and Mr. Sergey were the ones that initiated the process to obtain the certificate of elevation. I myself was the one that went ahead and paid the elevation certificate once again to the same surveyor to correct the elevation certificates. The issues that we're having with the elevation certificate was because of the vents, because it was in a flood zone and they needed to be corrected. I have several emails back and forth with county staff trying to assess how we could solve the problem of this elevation certificate. When I downloaded that file was in optics. I don't have a way to prove it. I contacted my attorney. I placed a call. I placed a call to Mr. Crockett, stating that my attorney was going to call them to get all the copies of the backup files. I do not have the same system capabilities that the county has to determine what logins or what type of files were done. I can only do my side. When I presented it the last time, there was comments like, "Oh, you're only showing me prompts here," and then comments like, "Oh, he's doing it because he wants to get paid." So this is the copy of the contract that I got paid before the certificate of elevation. Now, he's right. There was a case that they moved in because they've been wanting to move into the property. And I told him you couldn't move into the property before things are done because they wanted to add a pool and they wanted to add certain things. And they were moving in because they were living in an apartment. And there was a visa issue that they needed to have an address. So I don't have the motivation, nor do I have the skill to fake a certificate of occupancy to do that type of work.
I want to be helpful to you and give you a fair opportunity.
Yeah, I'm nervous because I'm not.
I understand. Are
Public
you
speaking.
familiar with the allegations that the county had charged you with?
I mean, they're alleging that I faked the certificate.
Okay, so
Right.
So the first one is that you issued a false certificate of occupancy. So your comment is you deny that in total.
Correct. That was downloaded.
These are yes or no questions.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
The next one is the use and occupancy. No building or structure shall be used or occupied and no change in the use until the building official has issued a CO. You denied that also.
Well, I mean, I didn't tell them to move into the house.
That's not my question.
I'm sorry, go
The
ahead.
three allegations.
Yes.
First one, you deny the first allegation. Do you deny the second allegation?
Yes, sir, I do, yeah. I mean, I didn't tell him to move to the house.
Okay. And you're saying the third one has to do with evidence that a certificate or a registration has been obtained by fraud or misrepresentation. So you deny that also?
I did not also, I don't,
Okay. And your answer before in your presentation, you really have no proof or basis. I mean, it's just your word against the county and, let me finish.
yes, sir.
The county and the owners, and you're just denying all of those.
Well, I mean, they're adding facts that are not factual. Because initially, when they contacted me about the certificate of elevation, I was the one that took care of all these problems. It wasn't Rosalia, it wasn't Mr. Sergey. They're not, so I was like, if there's a mistake, if there's a problem here, let's solve it. And there's emails back and forth with the county staff trying to solve these problems. They're saying that the homeowner did all this maneuvering to get the second CO on this project. And I went through the expense of solving this matter for them. Because it's my license, it's my livelihood here that I'm dealing with.
So, question, so you got denied the certificate of elevation, and then what, a year?
Year and a half.
A year and a half went before you finally got approved for a certificate of elevation.
I wasn't even informed that there was a denial on the certificate. There was this time where there was a COVID situation, and you take the certificate to this garage. They take it from the floor to the 19th floor.
So
I'm
what's
sorry.
the process? So when you apply for a certificate of elevation, you figure once you apply, then you can move forward and go ahead and do everything? Or
No,
do you,
no, no,
or
sir,
do you
no,
apply,
no.
do you apply? And then once you receive, then you proceed?
Well, the process is you go ahead and submit the certificate of elevation. You check in the system to see if it was approved or denied. And if there's a seal there, then that means that the certificate I'm assuming, I'm not saying that, I'm assuming that it was approved.
Okay, you can't assume. That's a mistake right there. But-
Well, I'm sorry.
I mean, because I know if you apply for a permit, that doesn't mean, hey, well, I applied, so I can go ahead and do my job.
No, you're right about that. No, it has to
But
be
a year and a
approved.
half went before you ever got an approved certificate of elevation.
Well, the year and a half went before we got the approved, because I was noticed. The homeowner called me and says, this is not approved. This is
Okay,
something wrong with this.
so what happened from the, when you applied for the certificate of elevation and 18 months later, when you got it, was there
Well,
work being performed?
I thought that the thing was done. I thought that this was done.
The house was done before?
Yeah, I thought this was done.
During
yeah.
that time?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
You're not getting anywhere fast. Henry?
We just clarified, you had all your building. Sorry, sir? You had all your building inspections done? You had a plumbing inspection, electrical inspection,
All final.
mechanical inspection,
Yes,
a
sir.
building final.
Right,
So all your inspections were complete.
correct.
You submitted your flood certificate. Okay, it was denied because of an error. I'd still like to know what the error was.
The error was that according to the flood zone, you're supposed to have vented in the
garage.
and in the doors, and you provide the Florida program approval for those vents. So I went ahead and did that. I submitted the second revision to the parking lot where they would.
It was flood vents on doors on the garage door or
There was-
hydrostatic vents.
Vents on the garage and on the side of the building. When
And it's your surveyor that provides that information.
the surveyor provides the information, provide product approval, Florida product approval.
Well, you supply the product approval, but your engineer gives you the square footage that you
Correct.
should have had based on
Correct.
the
There
building
was-
size.
It's an original mistake on the plans when the architect.
It's a pretty big mistake right there. You had to go back in and put these vents in or just,
We had to put in 4 more vents.
there you go. So your work really wasn't done.
Yeah, because there was, initially, when we submitted it, in the plans according to the county, and this is in an email detail to one of.
How long did it take you to get the vents in, once you knew that you had a problem?
Well, we did it like a week.
A week, okay? And then your surveyor provided you a new certificate
This is,
to the owner.
we went through 3 cycles of certificates on this issue.
Okay, but I understand that those vents are going to get flagged by your surveyor as not being in compliance, so.
Well, it was, sorry, sir. Yeah, it was noticed by, I have the emails from the county.
I mean, I've had some similar problems. I just caught up with them very
Yeah.
quickly, got it done.
Because depending on the manufacturer, and this manufacturer was from Virginia, each vent covers a certain amount of square footage.
That's not relevant. Okay, I mean, the fact that you didn't have you didn't have it right, you had to go back and retrofit, add 3 more. Okay, that process took some time, and your owner was living in the house the whole time.
Well, the owner was living in the house with a certificate. Well, this was after she came and complained about the certificate being fake.
Okay, so this all happened after?
Yes,
you
sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
All
sir.
right.
I went and I met with several people in the county, and I explained to them that, listen, this was in the when they had the office in the
Okay.
garage.
All right.
And
I understand now. You've answered my question. I think that everybody else will probably get a little clarity right there. Okay, thank you.
On the phone, any of the board members have questions? Okay. We're good, thank you.
Right, so I guess I'll make a,
You can make them, well, this is affirmation.
yeah, I'll make a
Affidavit
motion to
violation.
hold well, it's
No.
not my official.
No,
No?
this is the way this works. There are 3 allegations. You
Well, I
get-
want to make a statement.
Okay, then make a statement.
All right. I don't have my notes with me, Mr. Landis, but I do recall on our first visit on January 19th, you did express a concern about payment from
no,
your
sir,
client.
that was alleged by one of the members in the board.
Okay.
And-
All right, that was something that was expressed. The county has echoed that. And for me, I could fake this document quite easily.
Well, I mean, I
I
have
have,
skill to do
I'm
that.
not looking for feedback here, man. I could fake this quite easily. Now,
Sorry.
You have a,
without any kind of real evidence to that, I say that forget the fakeness of it, right? The county didn't issue it. That's their position and we have to honor that. Everything else is irrelevant.
okay. No, this is why we're independent. Okay. We're done. Unless you have specific questions, we're done with them. Okay. You ready to make a motion?
This is Kathy. I do have one more question.
Okay.
So, hi. So the additional vents that were installed and the cost of those, when was he paid? When was his final payment on all of that?
Well, I was paid for this job after the drywall finished according to the contract. But the vents.
20% drywall.
The vents were installed at my expense because I needed to get rid of these Russian people that were driving me crazy. I'm sorry, sounds
Okay.
bad, but
He basically ate the cost of the vents because the job he thought was done. So
Yeah.
he couldn't get more money from them
and
anyway.
I pay for all the surveyor to come in, do the certificates, and I have emails that show all of the hassle that I went through with this.
Any other questions from anybody? Kathy, good? Okay, ready for a motion?
This is for the first allegation.
We go allegations one by one.
First allegation, I agree with the county that he issued a false certificate of
So
occupation.
you find him guilty of allegation?
I find him guilty of allegation number 1.
Okay, need a second.
Second.
Into the mic, please.
Second.
Okay, so Mike and Dan for motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Second allegation.
That's the use and occupancy?
Yes. It's FBC 111.1.
People were living in it, but
Right.
It's the homeowner made that call presumably, right? It's not like he forced them into the house.
It was occupied.
Right.
Allegation number 2, I find him guilty.
Have a second?
Second.
Mike and Dan, any discussion?
Yeah, so I think personally for me, the house is in compliance. Is this correct? There's no
Not a question and answer.
Okay, yeah. So in light of that, I say we uphold the, find him guilty, but maybe we suspend the license for 3 months or something.
This is only guilt or innocence on the allegations.
Okay.
Penalty is the next phase after this. Okay. Any other comments on?
Yeah, Mosley, I guess if we've assumed that, that the certificate of occupancy was fraud, okay, that he was at least complicit in the fact that the owners were living in the house without a true CO. So I think that we can make an assumption that, allegation number 2 is, we should uphold it. So.
Okay, any other comments?
No, I think it's also reasonable to think that he was complicit.
Okay. Anybody else? All those in favor of guilty on allegation number 2, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? And allegation 3?
I'd like to get some advice from Henry on this.
Oh, Henry can make the motion, or we can discuss it, whatever is your pleasure.
Discussions.
I don't think he's comfortable. He wants to ask you questions, right, Mike?
Right. I want to know, because you're the most familiar with this process, then certainly more than I am. And I need to know your expertise. How is this, is this a trap that someone can easily fall into?
I think that the system is set up so that.
Henry, your mic, please.
The system is set up, and this is true in the city of Tampa and Hillsborough County. You submit these documents, and your assumption is because they're coming from a surveyor that they're intact. You typically, these surveys are coming at the very end of the project. I've had one recently where a set of stairs that were missing at the foot of the building were not included when the surveyors went out. And it was actually the fact that they had to know that the base elevation at the beginning of the stairs into the building, that first point of beginning, the flood certificate was revoked. And it took me a month before I started searching. Where's my CO? Where's my CO? Where's my CO? My owners hadn't moved in because it was in the middle of COVID, but they were still up north. But I could see where if you assume all your other ducks were in a row, that if an owner moved in, the CO should have been issued within a day. People are moving very quickly to get into those buildings. That something like this, even if it's for a minute, a day, or a week, you could have a problem. I could see where if my owners had jumped the gun, moved into the building, I would have assumed everything was fine. That would have been a hard pill for me to swallow, So all the other allegations and things that we just found him guilty on, though, could at least you could find some guilt in a suspension or potentially a limiting his permitting privileges makes sense. So I don't know about a full-blown revocation of his license. So.
Well, that's the next step after the finish the allegations. Okay. So do you think the level of whatever went on met that threshold of guilty or innocent on that one charge? In the Hillsborough County Code, Article 1, Section 8-1, paragraph 113.6.2, paren 1.
I think if the documents were, generated fraudulently, I think yes.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion up or down.
I need a definition. This is pretty serious.
We know.
So revocation is where they take your license.
We're not up to that yet. It says or.
Well, no, I want to know the difference between revocation?
Revocation
Suspension?
means you have to come back to us and get a Joy, you need to help me out here. Yeah, and get a supermajority of the board to have you be reinstated under revocation.
At some point,
In the future, you can suspend, you can revoke for a year, you can revoke permanently, you could, whatever the board decides. Are you there, Joy?
I am, Sam. I'm pulling up the code now.
and then what is a what's the difference between that and a
Suspension
suspension?
is a time period. You say, okay, he has no permanent privileges in the city and the county for 90 days. And after 90 days, his permitting privileges are restored. That's a suspension. Versus revocation, you have to basically get approval. Like I said, a supermajority, which means 5 out of the 7 members. 4 doesn't do it for you. And we had one of these several years ago. I think Chuck and Henry were on the board then. He had to have 5 positive votes. I don't want to say who it was. And he didn't get that. He only got 4 because I had to recuse. And he was not reinstated. So if you get revoked, you can get reinstated under the code.
So a revocation is more serious than a suspension.
Yes, because you have to get you
I
have to get
understand. I
accepted
understand.
by the
Okay, I
board.
got that. All right. Sorry.
Microphone, please.
You want me to make the motion, Mike?
Henry, or is the Doug?
That's Doug.
Go.
Motion to suspend his license for 1 year.
Say that again.
I make the motion, we suspend his license for 1 year.
I'm not up to that yet. That's the next step. We're still on the third allegation. Do you feel that these activities met the level of that part of the construction
I
ordinance?
think he's guilty of allegation number 3.
I'll make a motion.
I did.
What about, I can't understand what you said. Say it again,
I
please.
made a motion that he's guilty of allegation number 3.
Okay. Mosley will second.
So Doug makes the motion to find guilty on allegation number 3 and Henry seconds. Any other discussion? Okay, Joy, did you find what you're looking for?
I'm still looking, Sam.
Okay. Okay, any other comments on the motion as presented?
Can he complete his
Sam.
work that's
Sam,
open?
can you,
Go ahead, Joy.
I was going to say, if you guys go through the questions, but can you take a 5-minute break?
Sure. It's 10:22. We'll be back at 10:30.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
If everyone can please take their seats. The meeting will begin in 3, 2, 1.
Okay. We're back on. Waiting for Joy to comment in if she's ready. Are you ready, Joy?
Sure, Sam.
Go ahead.
So pursuant to the code, you guys do have the authority, as you know, to deny, suspend, or revoke the authority of the contractor to obtain permits, any assessment of administrative costs, and a recommendation to the Construction Industry Licensing Board. At any point in time, for reinstatement, the contractor does have to come back before the board, and the permitting privileges may be reinstated upon proof of compliance with the board order or current certification provisions, or any other extraordinary cause is demonstrated to warrant a reversal of the board's decision.
Any questions? Okay, so the question is still on allegation number 3. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, now we move on to the recommendation for the, I don't like to say punishment, but the recommendations for the county is citation be affirmed. Number 1, license holder ability to have permits issued in Hillsborough County and the associated jurisdictions be suspended or revoked. So who would like to craft the motion for that?
I make a motion to suspend his license for a year. Shields.
Shields. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion. Palavita.
Palavito seconds the motions for discussion. Go ahead, Mike.
We'll let you want to vote on this motion?
No, we have a motion. It sounds like there's questions or discussions on the motion before we vote. Microphone, please.
Outstanding permits, what kind of work does he have in progress with the county right now? I mean, if you suspend his license, then, okay.
Very good point. Very good point, Henry.
That's the way it works.
Our staff originated, this discussion with the other things that came up with the same situation with certificate of occupancies. There's other things that were prior to this, and so I'm pretty firm with this.
Okay, but the question is, if you suspend somebody's license effective the meeting, and then when I sign the board order and it gets recorded, any new permits will not be issued to that contractor, but existing permits can be completed and submitted to staff for CO or final, whatever the case may be based on the permit. Travis?
Correct. The suspension goes into effect actually tomorrow if y'all vote to suspend the license. The suspension does not affect issued permits. It is only, we're basically either suspending or revoking permitting privileges in the future, not in the past.
Right, and there was a previous case that was on the news we were talking about before, that a homeowner was complaining, how they're going to finish my project, and that's the honest answer, but the news didn't pick that part up. Anybody else have any questions?
So I'm open for anyone, if they want me to take back my motion and extend it longer, because he may have enough workload to get him through the year, and this doesn't affect him one iota. The problem is, I feel like this has been a problem. I feel like we've been dragged through the mud with this thing for many months, and I feel like this should be something that affects him. This should be a penalty. This shouldn't be a slap on the wrist.
Well, a year suspension is more than just a slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody's opinion, jump on in.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Doug, getting the ball rolling here. I think Henry had some ideas that were pretty creative, and I think pretty appropriate. sharing with us.
Yeah.
Is there any way we can see what he does have out for permits?
You'd have to do it on Acela. I don't know that staff has that information. But it really,
I can look.
I don't think it's germane to the discussion at this point. It's what, based on the evidence, what do you think is an appropriate issue, way to handle this? Doug is recommending a 12-month suspension. It's seconded. You want to add anything to it? In the past, we've required additional CEUs. We've done all those other kinds of things, which are certainly within our purview, as Joy just read from the ordinance. So
My thoughts on it were like a 6-month suspension with another 6 months probation and an extra 14 hours of community or continuing ed. That would have been, I think what he did was serious, but I'm just thinking back over the years where we've had people that had really been defrauded. There were life safety issues and, they walked out here with some, I would say, less fine or suspension than what we're tabling here. That's just my thought. I just think that, a CO, after all your inspections are done, to get tied up on a flood certificate and a lack of a CO is not the end of the world. The fraud part of it is.
Okay, so are you offering that as a friendly amendment?
Yes,
6
correct.
months suspension, 6 months probation,
14 hours of continuing ed.
Okay, what is 6 months?
Wait.
Yeah, 6 months, he can't permit anything new for 6 months. Then he's on probation for the additional 6 months.
Does that mean no?
I mean, just think if he has any other issues, while he's on probation, I just think it's a much, he's going to get flagged a little quicker if his license is on probation and in front of the board maybe quicker.
All right.
Henry, what if I amend that to 6 months suspended and 1 year probation?
Are you willing to accept that as a friendly amendment to your motion?
I would be willing to accept 6 months suspended and 1 year probation. 6 months probation is nothing.
You
6
want
months
6
under
months
probation,
suspension,
6 months under
12 months.
probation. He's supposed to do what's right. If he does what's right, then the probation doesn't mean anything anyway. So we just want him to do what's right.
So you're saying 6 months suspension, 12 months probation, and 14 hours of additional CEUs?
That'd be wonderful. That would be my amended.
Are you willing to accept that? Who was the second?
Jim Palavita, I'm willing to accept that.
You're willing to accept that? Okay.
Yes.
To answer your question, he has 3 open permits and 4 permits that are in process, meaning they've been applied for but have not been approved, and they will not be approved on a suspended license.
But they could be approved on probation.
Yes.
Good question, Mike.
For me, I think the probation thing is ambiguous and needs to be sorted out. I agree, maybe 6 months is right. The pool guy we had in here last month, we hit him with a year, and I feel like he was much more egregious in his violations and disdain for his clients. So I'd be down for 6 months, but I think the board has a responsibility to define this probation a little bit more, unless it's already defined in a county or city document somewhere that we could reference.
It's not in the ordinance.
No.
Any other?
And we're not interested in 3 months suspension, are we? And
Not at all.
12 months probation?
Okay. Unless, any other friendly amendments? Any other comments?
Is it possible to dictate what his additional CUs must be about?
Actually, yes, you can mandate that it be laws and rules. You can mandate that it's ethics. You can mandate that it's building code, whatever you want to do. But I don't know that we're ready for that part of this yet. Typically, it's just any 14 hours that are approved, and they would be in addition to the 14 hours which would be required for license renewal, which comes up this year. 22 is contractor year.
Well, I mean, he's had 2 previous violations against people moving in before a CO, so this would be 3. Just maybe he needs to understand it a little better, that's all.
Okay, well, I say laws and rules are probably, but that's something that staff can work with him on. Any other comments? All those in favor, do I need to restate the motion? Everybody got the motion down pat?
Sam, this is Joy. I just wanted to make a clarification because I think I heard somebody talk about any pending permits. According to the code, the violator shall be allowed to complete or resolve any unrelated open and or pending permits issued by the county prior to the violator's board date.
Okay, so that's now on the record.
Well, they have
That's
to
what
be
the ordinance
issued.
says.
They have to
What
be
does the
issued.
ordinance say?
They have to be issued though, not something that's in process. Is that correct?
Open and or pending permits issued by the county.
Well, but pending and issued by the county? That's the key word, is issued. So if it's in process, it's been submitted through a seller, but not issued a permit number by staff and the fees paid, it's not an issued permit.
The interpretation is that it's just those that are issued by the county. I think the operative phrase is that it's they're unrelated, open and or pending permits that are issued by the county.
Right, but it has to be issued by the county and it's not issued till it's all accepted and the paperwork's in order. Yes, okay. So it's a 6-month suspension followed by 12 months probation, 14 hours of continuing education that are in addition to any hours required by the state for his license renewal this year or whenever the term expires. Everybody got it? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anybody? So moved. Okay. So the order will be processed. It'll go through the attorney and then it'll be issued in the coming days, but it's effective for Travis tomorrow.
Yeah, can I ask for a clarification? He's currently on a suspended license from a previous case. So is this concurrent? Is it one after the other? The other one was not having a permit, unpermitted work. Y'all suspended his license last month.
How long is his suspension?
I believe it's, my memory serves, it's until he gets the actual permit issued.
In my mind, this is in addition to what's already pending.
Okay.
It's consecutive unless somebody disagrees. Consecutive.
If we just clarify that in the board order. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any off agenda items? There are some new state laws pending that are headed to the governor's desk, and I know staff has been reviewing those. We're hopefully going to send out some links to some videos, like I said before, about the county and the city put on. Feel free to watch it. One of them talks about how to get your CO. That was put on yesterday. It was pretty interesting. Next meeting date is May. Date to be determined. Unless they change the rules, we'll still be here. It's 2 months. We're not meeting in April. We'll meet in May. Anybody else have anything else? Not. Thank you, everybody, and we're adjourned.
Thanks. Great job, Sam.
Thank you, sir.
Have a great day.
You too.